As spectacular as a termite hydrogen PhD may sound, I want to take this opportunity to speak about the journey to get the chance to do it, given that what you're seeing now and what you're about to see is just the tip of the iceberg, and the icing on a cake that was held to bake and is now ready to taste. The journey to get here was full of twists and turns and highly non-linear, and ultimately exemplifies why both resourcefulness and resilience are key to success, and why it's very important not to fall into that trap of believing that there's just one way the world works, and that new ways can't be found, because I may have just stumbled upon one. Touch wood. All trails got blazed by somebody willing to forge the path, and sometimes you gotta be so delusional until you never were in the first place. I gotta tell you, this video features disappointment after disappointment after disappointment until pretty much the very end where I reap the juicy fruits of my labor. So yeah, hold tight. So it all started in my third year of chemical engineering, where I had a module called Advanced Sustainable Systems, and I was briefed with alleviating land degradation and food insecurity in a rural Zambian village. But you see, the problem here is that the villagers were forced to engage in a very destructive farming practice known as slash and burn agriculture, which literally involves cutting down vegetation and burning the land to release nutrients so they can meet their immediate needs for their crops, but that really degrades their ability to grow crops in the longer term. So it's a very, very vicious cycle. Truly vicious in every sense of the word. So here's where the termites kick in. My professor's informant actually in the village at the time informed us that a lot of the wood they have is moist, so it's unsuitable for burning. So I did a little bit of research and found that most termites actually prefer moist wood. So then I had the idea, what if we had a greenhouse, right? And we put a termite colony and a crop of choice in there, right? And we can calculate the ratios such that the respiration from the termite and the photosynthesis from the plant or the crop of choice balance each other out. That way we can keep the greenhouse closed from, the outside environment, and that way it can naturally heat up to temperatures higher than the outside environment. But because the respiration and photosynthesis balance each other out, the gas balance is stable and both organisms can live. Ultimately, that heat accelerates crop growth, and the termites eating their wood actually provides a nutrient-rich soil, so they have immediate crops that they can eat to meet their immediate daily nutritional needs, but they also have soil to remediate their land in the long term. That's the idea. I can't remember the ins and outs of what exactly brought termites to mind, because this was years ago, but hey, man, it all worked out. The better, it's so good. Maybe it was a miracle. But yeah. I'm very happy to say that my design project did get a first-class grade. Although I do have to state that at this time of writing, all those years back when, I was not aware that termites produced hydrogen, so that could have boosted it further. And I also, in hindsight, didn't consider the uses of the eggs for like poultry and stuff. But hey, it's all good. So here's where the disappointment starts and the roller coaster starts to go down. So I cold email and submit a lot of pitch decks to various different organizations, ranging from the World Wildlife Fund to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Wow, ain't that a mouthful. BP and BASF through their venture scheme, Imperial College, and so many more that I can't even remember at this point. And I heard virtually nothing back. Maybe a few thanks, but we're not going to take this at this time, etc. It doesn't align with our interests, but pretty much nothing. But the one that surprised me the most, well, the two that surprised me the most were not hearing anything back from the World Wildlife Fund and the UNCCD. I'm not going to say that again. But yeah, that surprised me. Like, I emailed them more than anybody, and I didn't hear a damn thing back, apart from maybe one branch of World Wildlife Fund, ironically in Zambia itself, that just stated, sorry, we can't help you at this time, try these guys, who of course didn't get back either. But yeah, disappointing start, surprising start, but I was a bit discouraged, but I pretty much moved on. So, okay, after that, I moved on to doing my master's, and yeah. So I complete my chemical engineering master's, where although nothing I studied directly contributed to the termite hydrogen project, of course it upgraded my qualifications and leveled me up, and therefore expanded the horizons as to where I could reach out to and where I could network and where I could ultimately go. So some point after this, not too long, I actually stumble upon a paper which states that termites can produce hydrogen. And that's crazy. The crazy thing about it to me is that it was a blink and you could miss it paper, because there is so little literature on termite hydrogen. So I could have easily missed that paper and I wouldn't be here speaking to you right now, and I wouldn't be working on termite hydrogen right now. So yeah, blessed am I. It's important to note that I did not directly go into the PhD I'm doing right now because unfortunately, I had a very negative experience with my MSc research project supervisors. Well, it was going great for most of it, but it really turned at the end to an extent where I felt betrayed. I didn't mean to be negative or anything, but I have to be true to myself in saying how that made me feel. I had to be true. As a result of said experience, I was very wary of doing a PhD due to the unreliability of supervisors, coupled with the fact that I'm quite an extroverted person and I can feel kind of lonely quite easily. So at that time, I was not on board with doing a PhD. In fact, I was vehemently against it. Luckily that changed, but that will, explain itself as the story unfolds. So yeah, don't worry, we had a happy ending. So the next thing I did was enter my little termite greenhouse into a business pitching competition in which I did not come out on top because my naive tree hugger self thought that the scientific and philanthropic implications of the design would outweigh the lack of business planning and practice and the lack of business acumen. So yeah, in hindsight, I don't really know what I expected, but I went in anyway. Silly me. Normally, I can handle disappointment pretty well, but this time I took it like a sore loser. I went home and was like, what's wrong with people? Look at the state of the planet right now. I didn't take it well. Let's just say that much. But, it wasn't all bad. I got a lot of motivation from the compliments from the design, and I did make some key contacts, which did, progress things along a little bit. So I gained something, better than nothing. Sometimes you don't take the giant leaps you thought you would, but baby steps are still better than staying in place. So from one of those contacts that I made another contact in a medium-sized agricultural company. And the video call we had pretty much just went, oh my God, that's an amazing idea. Sorry, I don't know how to help you. I mean, hey, at least he was smiley about it, I guess. So anyway, I move on and I decide to get in contact with the Zoological Society of London, specifically the London Zoo branch, considering at the time I lived in London. And yeah, I still got no response from the tech and collaborations team despite emailing multiple times. And I emailed HR and I get hit with that garbage that grinds my damn gears. Oh, we received hundreds of these every day, yada, 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 as though mine didn't have its fair chance of being the one. So sorry, I'm getting a bit heated, but oh man, that really just riles me up, man. Mathematically, what do any of those designs have to do with me? Why can't mine be special? I should have been given my time of day. This is Zoological Society of London. We're supposed to be on the same team here. And it's funny because this rhetoric about supposed to be being on the same team is something I'll be repeating a lot. But anyway, so a few weeks later, I decided to go into London Zoo itself to the insect exhibit to try and speak to somebody there in network. And whilst they were receptive, they did say that my professor had to email directly, but he couldn't because this was years after I produced a design project in the first place. And this was also from my bachelor's, whereas I was quite far past that now. So he wasn't able to get in contact because I wasn't able to reach him. And yeah, so I explained that to HR and they still don't budge. So a few months down the line from that, I stupidly decided to try my luck with cold emailing, where I sent 13 LinkedIn in-mails to 13 key members of the World Wildlife Fund, and I didn't hear back from one of them. The one person who accepted my connection request, I followed up with the same message to follow up, which I just said anyway. And yeah, he left it on red, and that left a pretty bad taste in my mouth, to be honest. And what's more is that I Gmailed the head of innovation, or one of the heads of innovation at World Wildlife Fund, who proudly proclaimed and touted on her LinkedIn that, oh, this is my dream job. And yeah, I didn't hear anything back from her on Gmail or LinkedIn. I was starting to realize what I couldn't see before, and the naivety was starting to wash away bit by bit by bit. Although this sounds disappointing, this was a positive learning curve in disguise, which tends to be the case with disappointment, huh? So a few months later, having been left in a rapture by Avatar 2 Way of Water, I decided to try and get in contact with James Cameron, given that he's very notable for environmentalism. And yeah, well, this time it's really to be expected that I didn't hear anything back from him. It's James Cameron, but yeah, it was worth a shot, It actually did lead somewhere, not in terms of it itself, but ideas for networking, so which I'll get to in just a moment. So anyway, moving on, I decided to get in contact with Rewild, a conservation initiative founded by Leonardo DiCaprio, and this time they actually were interested in hearing about my design. So yeah, I sent them a short little proposal, which I made a bit brief because I didn't want to give too much away, given that I wanted to establish some trust with them. And yeah, they accepted it. They said thank you. And then after a while, I did not hear back from them, even though I kept emailing, hey, could I get an update? Hey, could I follow up? And eventually when I send a bit more of a firmer email saying, hey, it's been a while, man, what's going on? I hear back from the secretary who says basically that they're a non-profit organization and that they don't work with products, because she thought that the products of the chemical reaction that I was talking about in my proposal were commercial products. Like, come on, man. Like, what, pardon me, what do you even say to that? On top of that, she did also say my proposal was vague, which was a fair criticism given that, as I said before, I wanted to be brief to not give too much away to build some trust first. But come on, we're supposed to be on the same team here, trying to save the planet. Could she have not asked me for more details? But anyway, you know, I kind of just, I just moved on from that, even though that was almost a sweet taste of success that was just ripped away from me, man. And yeah, I kind of expected better from something founded by Leo, but hey, man, you learn something new every day, huh? No disrespect to Leo, I know that's on you, but still, that is your organization, man. So here's where I had a little bit of a crazier idea that was, inspired by the whole James Cameron thing. I decided to try and network to get in contact with Greta Thunberg, which in hindsight seemed like a good idea. Not so much now, but I will get into that in a moment. So through Twitter, you know, I'm not calling it X, it's always going to be Twitter, yeah? Say what you want, Elon. Anyway, so through Twitter, I contact some lesser known climate activists who of course had more time of day to get messages, etc. And through that, I ask around, and I network, and I do actually get Greta Thunberg's phone number. And yeah, unfortunately, I did not hear back. And when I tried to get in contact with their Fridays for Future team, they kind of just stated that they're not a place for solutions and that solutions should go to somewhere where they could be better used. But I'm just thinking, with your kind of network, would you not really be able to help me in doing that? But once again, you know, the veil is falling and the naivety is getting washed away bit by bit. I put this on the back burner for a while because I got a second final interview with a company called Renewable, and I thought that maybe if I get the job, I can network internally and pitch it. But unfortunately, I come up short in the interview, being told that I was too technical for the job and that it wasn't where my capabilities were at, which at the time sounded like a compliment, which it probably was a compliment, but well, anyway, I hope so. It sounded like a compliment. Although I was very disheartened, it wasn't all bad because from the site visit to their anaerobic biodigester, their large-scale one, I did have some inspiration for an adaptation of the design, which although is outside the scope of the PhD, most likely, it will probably be very useful in the future. So yeah, you know, disappointment, but nuggets of success in disguise, I suppose. At this point, I was getting pretty desperate, especially because this was before my birthday and I didn't want to be bummed out on my birthday, you know. So the next thing I decide to try my luck again at London Zoo. This time they weren't even as flexible. They said, oh, everything has to be submitted for a CV, you know, when I went to the insect house. Okay, whatever. So after that, I approach a company called Entocycle, which breeds black soldier fly, because I thought it would be a great foot in the door to get some experience with engineering with insects, even though black soldier fly and termites are as different as can be. But hey, it would have been a foot in the door. I was approached really kindly by one of the members of staff who actually took the time out to hear what I had to say. And yeah, he actually took my CV, which was very kind of him. And although I did not hear back, it's fair. Disappointing, but fair. You know, they're a small company and they didn't need work experience at the time. You know, I'm not complaining, even though I'm complaining about pretty much everyone else in this video, but hey, don't worry, Entocycle, I feel you. So with desperation kicking in and seeping in even more, I decided to try and re-pursue the establishment of contact with Greta Thunberg. So I decided to go to one of her big climate talks in central London with 5 other famous climate activists and a big audience in the Excel Centre in London. And I had the idea to raise my hand at the end and just ask her about it generally. And I don't know if it was because I wasn't brave enough or wasn't stupid enough, but I just couldn't do it. Like the butterflies in my stomach were the size of birds, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So the next thing I do is enter a Microsoft Teams chat for one of the climate campaigning groups. Although it didn't have Greta in it herself, it had other famous climate activists, so I thought it would be a good place to network. So I enter one of their general calls and I asked, hey, I have this great engineering project that could really be pivotal on climate change, groundbreaking, etc., etc. Could you guys help me with some networking to reach someone that could help me? And they were just like, yeah, we don't really do that. But, so I contact one of the members of that who literally put her phone number on her profile. And when I rang her, she was like, how did you get my number? And then, I explained that to her. And then I told her, etc., like, would you be able to help me? And then do you know what she says? She's like, with all due respect, Greta Thunberg has better things to do right now. And she shut me off. What do you mean better things to do right now? We're supposed to be on the same team. Like, what do you think? Just like yelling for changing climate change is going to bring it about? That's another thing I want to talk about, man. No disrespect to these climate activists, especially the ones that are for real, because, it's not like all of them are for real, but it's us PhD students and researchers who are actually doing the work to fight climate change. Because seriously, yapping it like a little chihuahua is not going to solve climate change. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it ain't. That is what it is. That's the cold, hard truth, Us PhD students, where's our cred? We're the ones, well, not me specifically, but a lot of people have to go through the toxicity of academia, but they stay at it to make a difference, Where's our clout? Where's our credit, And yeah, that's the thing with some climate activists. I want to enunciate some, not all, some of them are definitely for real. Some climate activists need climate change more than they need to solve it, if you know what I'm saying. But anyway, pardon me, that was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back in my naivety arc. And I kind of realized, you know what? The whole world is a certain way, and maybe I do have to conform. And something sparked in me where I realized, you know what? Maybe a PhD ain't the worst thing after all, and maybe I have to face my fears a little bit, which turned out to be a very good decision, Shout out to facing your fears. Let's face our fears. So not too long after that, I stumble upon the Sustainable Hydrogen CDT PhD program, which is a paid PhD program with multiple other benefits over a conventional PhD. And I thought, oh my God, this looks good. I vibe with this. So I applied, and yeah. In the meantime, waiting to hear back, I also applied for a conventional PhD at Nottingham with my old design project supervisor. Yeah, I went to the University of Nottingham, so yeah. And he was really on board with the termite hydrogen idea. And yeah, so the administrative process started, and we started drafting a research proposal, etc. Around that time, when that was in processing, I hear back from Sustainable Hydrogen CDT, and they said they'd like to interview me, although not for termites, for something very different, for like algal hydrogen, which I thought, hey, that doesn't look so bad either. Once my foot's in the door, I can make my way around. And yeah, I actually get that offer, which was the start of something special. And I'm really glad I got that offer. Although at the time, right, I thought it was a good backup, because what I really wanted to do was the termites. But unfortunately, with the termite hydrogen for the conventional PhD, that got cancelled, given that there wasn't a termite expert on board, and it was thought that the risk was too high, and some administrational rubbish because it was between two different departments, and there was some issue with funding, and yeah, just some bureaucratic BS. Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing, but hey, I said it anyway. Yeah. So I crack on with the paid PhD in hydrogen from algae, and yeah, I have a discussion with my professors, and they happen to work with something called water fleas, which is a different invertebrate. So I thought, hey, that could be good experience towards working with insects and stuff like that. Even though they're not insects, but obviously they're invertebrates and they're in an engineering setting. But they said, unfortunately, they are out of touch with that practice because it was years ago. And they also, unfortunately, let me know that although it was in the offer, the growing algae is not something that can be included in this PhD because the equipment at Birmingham and the facilities were not conducive to growth, having grown something like 0.8 grams of algae in 3 years or something like that. So unfortunately, yeah, the biological side, which was what I was really into, was not going to happen in this PhD. However, happy endings still happen. So here's the beginning of the end to this arduous journey. So my old supervisors with the algae hydrogen really did recognize that my heart was in biosciences, and to do a PhD, your heart has to be in something. So they very kindly actually helped me switch and facilitated the switch, which I am so grateful for, given the reputation for toxicity that academia has. So all things considered, that really went well. So I am very grateful for them. This termite hydrogen would not have happened without them. So thank you. And yeah, so the process of finding that new PhD starts. So the first thing I do is go to an insect biologist, an entomologist professor in the biosciences building, and I approach him. And he said it's a great idea at first, but he said no on the basis that he doesn't know the engineering and it's very difficult to get termites in the country, and he's not had any experience with termites. But I didn't give up. I actually found an insect retailer, shout out to Answer Us, that actually sells termites, and that really perked him up a bit. He said, oh, well, how about that? I'll be damned. And then he changed his tone to, I don't mind being a co-supervisor, but your main supervisor has to be a chemical engineer, because he didn't know any of the engineering stuff. You know, completely fair. So I was like, oh, wow. You know, this does go to show why diligent persistence pays off. Not boneheaded persistence, but diligent persistence. You know, there's it's a fine art to it. You could even say it's a lost art, but you know, that's getting a bit ahead of myself. So anyway, I arrange a meeting with a microbiologist, chemical engineering professor who's interested in the idea. And I have the meeting with him so here we don't have meetings in office. Some professors like to have it in the atrium, which is an out and open area at the university, which was extremely beneficial for me for a reason I'm going to get into. So I pitch him the idea with my little cute Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. And he was like, this is a great idea, but this is beyond the realm of my expertise, and that he couldn't help me. And my heart sank at first, until another professor walked by that this professor knew and said, hey, why don't you have a meeting with him and introduce me, etc., right? So I have that meeting with this professor, not expecting a whole lot, because I'm just so used to disappointment at this point. And he's like, hell yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, no way. Like, I couldn't believe myself. Like, my body felt some strange confusion that I've never felt in my life. Like, this is actually happening? Like, the dream is coming true? Like, I couldn't comprehend it. Like, it was a strange feeling, but like, yeah, the show got on the road, man. And that is the end of the journey. And because I found both an insect specialist and a chemical engineer who was willing, this PhD began to happen. And yeah, that is the story. But you know what's really interesting about that, right? It's really good to network and talk to multiple people, because no person knows every single thing, and like, some people can approach things from a different angle. Like, for example, the professor that said no said that measuring the heat from the termites would be very complex and involve some complex practice called calorimetry. But the professor that I spoke that said yes said, hell yeah, we'll just use infrared cameras. It's all good. And that goes to show, always network, because everybody has their own nuggets of information. Networking is key. But yeah. So the moral of the story is, be prepared to give up on certain routes, but don't give up on the final destination. Dreamers and realists, after much difficulty, can eventually get married and produce the most beautiful babies. So dreamers and realists, why not get a chance to get to know each other a little better? Thank you so much for listening to me speak for almost 25 minutes, and have a beautiful day.